So our MATLAB code uses homogeneous coordinates and linear algebra to create a system of our different images and project them into 3D space. So for our normal lens system, we wanted to know more about the details of it. So we measured the field of view by imaging a ruler, measuring how far away that is, and putting that on the screen. And from that, we determined that in width, our field of view is about 32 degrees, and in height, it's about 24 degrees. We also wanted to know the size of the pixels, so we took off the lens, so we're just seeing the detector, and we put the microscope in there and use that to measure the height and width and divide by 480 and 640, which is the number of pixels, and determine that our pixels are 10 by 10 microns.
To calibrate the camera, we use this 16 by 16 grid of black and white squares. Each square is 38 millimeters by 38 millimeters. And then for the last part of the lab, we use this square covered in checkerboard to find the angle between the surface normals in order to determine the shape of the box. The procedure for this lab, we took our pictures with our camera. We took 16 images of the checkerboard with 16 by 16 squares. We then imported the images into the MATLAB program using image names, which effectively reads the images. We then manually extracted all of the grid corners. Alright, so to extract the grid corners, you just click starting in the same corner each time. Once it freezes, okay, there we go. Clicking in the same pattern, clockwise or counterclockwise, every single time. This is just for one image. And then it you can see it guesses where the rest of the grids are, or which the rest of the squares are based on the data you input. We chose at first to do 14 by 14 grid, but we couldn't get our pixel error small enough, so we eventually decided to do a 10 by 10 grid, which did lower our pixel error considerably. To further lower our error, we had the program recomp the corners by itself, doing sort of an automatic routine. We also did a manual way where you analyze the error, and you can sort of look at this picture here and see which photos correspond to the most error, and then go back in manually and re-extract the grid corners, or try to adjust for the distortion by yourself. And if one was just too much of an outlier, we could suppress it, which would enable us to lower our pixel error even more. So the final step is to undistort an image once you think your calibration is good enough.
These are some examples of the pictures we took to calibrate our narrow field camera.
These are images for the narrow field camera. This is the corrected picture and this is the uncorrected picture. As you can see, they're not very different. This is because the distortion wasn't very strong to begin with in the original image.
To find the MTF of our system, we took a picture of the slant edge spatial frequency response card, and then we ran it through the slant edge analysis MATLAB program to find our MTF. So we selected a region of interest on our picture that was something similar to this, and from that the program can calculate the MTF for which our system looked like this. For the next section of the lab, we took an image of the box covered in a checkerboard pattern and then used the program to extract corners on each of the faces, and from this we could determine the vector normal to each face. And using that information, we found that each of our sides was between 91 degrees and 88 degrees from each other, which would make sense for a cube shape. Using the same procedure that we used previously, we measured the size of the CCD using the microscope, and we knew that it was 480 by 640 pixels, so we found our pixel size to be the same, which was 10 by 10 microns. From then, we also measured the field of view using the same procedure as before, and we found that we had an 81 degree width and a 62.76 degree height. These are some example images that we took to calibrate the fisheye lens.
So for the fisheye portion, we were able to get our pixel errors down to about 0.25 in each direction. Here you can see we have a distorted image and then our image after we undistorted it. You can see there's still some residual distortion around the edges because it wasn't perfect, but we did manage to get rid of a lot of the distortion, which is great.
This is the MTF that we got for the fisheye lens system.